All right. Welcome to the first ever A8 podcast. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, although everybody in the league already knows who you are. Hey, I want you to introduce yourself, and I want you to say that all of the people in the league that you've never physically met in person. Okay? Josh, why don't you start?
All right, I am Josh, aka Smo Bob.
Smo Bob.
Never, never met in person. Is actually you, Luke, and Jade. That's it.
Of course. Love it. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely.
All right, Mark.
All right, I'm Mark, manager of the EK Southsiders, co-manager with Eric. He makes most of the decisions, if you can tell.
Yeah.
Who I haven't met, I don't know if I've met you. So yeah, I haven't. Was Jade at the draft? I'm trying to think.
No, because Jeremy drafted with Luke
Oh,
at the
yeah.
church.
Jade wasn't in the league. He was with Alex.
No,
Well, but I still think he was there though. So maybe I have met everybody in person, but maybe not Jade in person.
Oh, that hurts. And also, all of the fans have been asking, are we going to get a change of name on Fantrax from EK to maybe, I don't know, Southsiders, getting creative or something like that? Is that in talks with the owners?
Man, we have to run it by. There's just a lot of issues with that. It might stay that for a while.
There's paperwork you got involved. It's a whole.
Yes.
It's a whole.
Yeah.
Thing. Love it.
Yeah, we're worried about our roster right now. That's the first worry.
You don't have to worry much though. Kev, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Kevin, owner of HGOB. Tonight you can call me HGOP. He gets on podcast.
Hey,
and
or Ultra Steak for if you want to throw in a little nickname in there.
That's right, my secret AI analyst that I have on the side that you guys don't know about. I have not met Luke in person, and I think half the league I've met one time at the draft. So if you walked up to me, I probably wouldn't even notice who you are.
Wow. Yeah. You would never. I'd be the Phillies hat might give it away, but other than that, I think. Also, I think Kevin's trying to meet other people in person. That's why he wants to wait to do the other draft, the free agent draft, in person. Right? I see. There's a strategy there. But we might be waiting until September. All right. Hey, to begin the podcast, we're gonna play a little bit of a game. And this is going to test some of our skills, although it won't be testing my skills because I know the answers to the question. But I'm going to show you guys, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, which is the only place it will be, you can play this game as well. There is a ghost team that I have polled all of their player positions, non-pitchers, and I've given 2 simple clues. I'm not trying to give it away. But one clue does cut it down to 6 teams. I'm going to read off every position of them currently, and I do not, Kevin. I don't want you looking. Don't go. No fan tracks over here. Your AI is probably already searching. Their catcher was 36. I'm going to allow for 1 question at the end of this from each of you. If you don't already think you have an answer, and if you think you found an answer, I want you to write it down somewhere. The catcher is 36 overall. Now, I want to give the disclaimer that this is not the overall in baseball. This is overall at their position. Their first baseman finished 4th, the 4th best first baseman. This is of last year. Their second baseman finished 4th. Their third baseman finished 5th. Their shortstop was 21st. Their corner infield, which is a third baseman, finished 3rd. Their middle infielder, which is a second baseman, finished 5th at his position. Outfielder was 2nd, or one of their outfielders was 2nd. One of their outfielders was 9th. One of their outfielders was 4th. And one of their outfielders, which is a little bit of a hint here, played left field, and in the left field category, finished 4th. 2 clues were: 1, he made the playoffs, and this offseason, he traded his best player. Okay, if I don't say it out loud, but do we have any guesses? I want just a hand raised if we have some early guesses going on. Any early guesses? Okay. Smo Bob thinks that he's got he's on to this owner. Obviously, it's one of our 6 playoff teams.
So this is 2023 rankings, and it's who's currently on the roster.
This is rankings from last year and who is on the roster right now.
Wow.
And if you look at this roster, I wish this roster was my team. Because, I mean, you have first base, fourth, top 5 is first base, second base, third base, corner infield at their respective position, middle infield at their respective position. What? 3 outfielders. Now, left field gets a little specific. Bob does have a connection to this specific team.
All right, I know it.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else have a? I think Kevin's off the scent. Bob, where are we at? How you feeling?
It's more of a guess for me, but I think I've got a good idea of who it could be.
Okay. How do we want to do this? How do I not give it away by Mark saying the answer if he thinks he's really onto it? Let's start with whoever thinks they're farthest away. Kevin?
Yeah, that's probably me.
All right,
I'm
Kevin.
shot in the dark. I'm gonna say this is the Banners.
Okay. Josh, what's your guess?
My guess was also the Banners.
Mark?
Yep, Banners.
It is the Banners. Now what gave it away? Because who is the left fielder, Josh, that was traded
Yep.
that was the left fielder?
Yelich, actually.
Christian Yelich. Yes, it was. All right, Mark, what gave it away?
I thought Betts gave it away the second.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You don't think? When I was writing this, I thought traded their best player would have given it away, which was Aaron Judge this offseason. So,
but even before you said something about Yelich and all that connection, I thought it was going to be because of Bellinger, because I traded in Bellinger too at some point during the year. So he was still my first guess, but
there you go.
Still on the scent either way. Call me Bloodhound.
I chose Jade's Banners as the front runner for this game because I think it just goes to show. I think Jade's team was the 6th final team that made the playoffs last season. They had a first round exit in the playoff last season. And if you look at the team, you're talking, like I said, had mentioned already, you have multiple players who finished in the top 5 of their position respectively. You had the 2nd best outfielder, and I believe he's the 3rd best overall baseball fantasy player in general, in Mookie Betts, who doesn't just play outfield. He's also second base eligible, and it's looking like he's going to be the Dodgers' everyday second baseman moving forward. This does exclude, of course, the impact of pitching. So how much do you guys think when we talk baseball, this is the final team that made it in the playoffs in our league this year. And if this was if last year was this year, he's the first team out of the playoffs, right? Because we're only having 5 teams make the playoffs in 2024. So talk to me about the level of competition. Now, we can also have a discussion about pitching. I don't know. I didn't run these numbers for his pitching, but how competitive is it in comparison to the full season? He didn't have Yelich on deck and he didn't have Betts for all the season. So now, of course, we're talking about he's made some team improvements. But, I mean, this is a team that looks on paper better than 6th overall, I would think.
I mean, we also got to talk about the elephant in the room. His team wouldn't be eligible to play right now, being over the cap limit, though.
That is oh, wow. That is very true. That is very true. Is he currently he is currently over the cap. Okay, interesting. Now this maybe does look like a team that's over the cap. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Now he has some question marks in, and I know a little insider trading here. He has some guys that he's waiting for the free agency draft to make decisions on, in JD Martinez, who's going to make more than $10 million a year, I presume, and Justin Turner as well. 2 guys that he really liked from his roster last year that I don't think he has the ability to keep.
Yep, because he doesn't even have the utility spot.
He has 2 utility
roster.
Yeah,
he needs over cap and utility spots. He needs to roster.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think of Jade's team in general? Yeah, and what do you think in comparison? What does forget cap mark? Where does this position player stack up with the rest of the league?
I like his team. I mean, he's going to have to move things around, but I like having the elite players, which he does in a lot of positions, corner, infield, Betts can play it all over. He's got to figure out what he's doing with his middle infield contracts, but overall, he's in a position of power, but we'll see what the trading looks like for his team. He's the person I expect to make the next move with trading.
Yeah, Josh, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this screen's only telling, depending on who you ask, 40 to 50% of the story, because as we saw last year, how much weight pitching weighed onto the final standings realistically. And then looking at his arms, like there's a lot of gambles. There's a lot of guys that could be great. There's a lot of gambles, but having a consistent few hundred points on your roster lineup week after week can make up for that. I mean, you just have somebody get on a tear for, a 10, 15 game streak, and they can win you some games. But take it into the cap and stuff like that too. I mean, I think that he's in a good spot. He is in the driver's seat. And we'll see what happens.
Kevin, before we get your opinion on this, if I was over the cap, everybody would be calling me an idiot. Now Jade's over the cap. He's in the driver's seat. So I'm looking for some consistency across the league here. But Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, the Banners seem to me like to be the most lopsided team as far as hitters and pitchers, and every other team seems like they're trying to be a more balanced look. It'd be interesting to see how. I feel like unbalanced teams last year that were tight on cap, they had strong pitching, and they're just trying to find hitters. So this is the complete opposite problem that I think we saw last year. But he does have a lot of draft capital. I mean, 2 picks this year, 4 picks next year. But pitching is very, very hard to get in this league. So interesting problem to solve. Be fun to see how it plays out.
I also
Go
ahead.
I'm gonna step in. We're talking about his pitching. I feel like he has 4 top 10 pitchers on his roster.
Okay, go ahead.
Close to it. I mean, you got Castillo, you got Gaussman, you got Peralta, and then who else does he have?
I mean, I like Abbott on his team a lot, and Baez.
And well, Eflin's not top 10, so I kind of got crazy top 10, but he's got enough guys, I would say. And then he has, like Josh said, some guys that he's hoping come along, like Hunter Brown, a couple of younger guys that are cheap.
No, he really got hit with arbitration too. I think he's one. His team got hit the most in arbitration additions this offseason so far. I had a conversation with him early on. I was shocked, Josh, that he traded with you for Yelich because he was worried about going over the cap. Now, there's some guys that I think he is eyeballing in terms of cutting or trading. We're going to see Gleyber Torres get traded before the beginning of next season. I also think that I've been in talks with him. I know some of you on this call, I believe, have been in talks with him. He's going to trade that 6th overall draft pick, and he's not going to make a selection there. If he does make a selection at 6, it's going to squeeze the draft because he's going to select a guy that does not deserve to go at 6, but has the cap to go at 6. I think that's when you start to see guys like Clark Schmidt move up in a draft that doesn't deserve to be taken at 6th overall, but he'll add another pitcher to his repertoire. Why not? You know what I'm saying? The whole point of this exercise was to talk about this. And one more point to your point, Kevin, last year, and I would love some of your guys to take this how the podcasts go along. So hitting, I always say that hitting wins weeks, that pitching wins championships, and then Colt won the championship, and now I can't say that anymore because his team was hitting. He got hot and kept hitting, and then he won the championship based on hitting, in my opinion. We saw a team like Alec who the Bandits heavily relied on pitching. Their pitching disappears, and they fumble the ball towards the end of the year, and now they can't make a run. They were a team that relied on pitching, and they fell off, whereas a team that relied on hitting won the championship. And I know Mark has some things to say about this as well. I believe Mark is probably the lowest in the entire league in terms of trusting and relying on pitching. What do you guys say?
I'll go first. Yeah. I mean, it's a dynasty league. We know pitchers get hurt all the time. Who can you rely on more? More the bats. Yeah, some of them are going to get hurt throughout, but those pitchers with big contracts, when they get hurt, it's harder to move people around, getting people for the playoff run. We witnessed 2 teams make the championship that were able to use the waiver wire. I mean, Luke, your team, you had Darvish injured, and it took you a while to even cut him in the playoffs just because of the cap space and thinking maybe I need to keep this arm longer. So I think ideally, if you can keep it in a points league, if you can keep your pitchers healthy, yes, that's going to dominate. But I think overall, you'd rather depend on hitting to make you the winner.
And I've completely changed my strategy on that based on if you went and looked at my roster today, it looks wildly different than it did mid last season. I've gone away from pitching. I've gone directly to young pitching with young arms and waiting for them to, tear their Tommy John, and then I'll move on to the next one. Kevin, what do you think?
I think the pitching conspiracy is still alive. You had it right,
is.
Luke,
Hey, that's
and
the
you
best.
went away from it.
That's the best voice memo I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you want leverage, especially in a playoff matchup, a must win, you can't leverage more at bats. You can leverage innings pitched. And I don't know why people didn't take that strategy more. Obviously, me and Colt were riding that strategy all the way to the World Series, and it worked out. And man, it came down to the very last day on Sunday. He picked up 2 pitchers. I picked up 2 pitchers. I just picked up the wrong 2. If I picked up his, he picked up mine, I'd have a trophy right now. But I think you guys are relying on hitting, which I get it, but it's really easy to add pitchers for a weak matchup. It's really hard to add bats.
That's true.
See, I think you're making the argument, though, that hitters are more important. You just think in stream pitchers. I agree, streaming pitchers is good, but you have to have those top bats to be in the championship to stream guys.
That's true. That is true. And I'd love your guys, man, we're getting off the beaten path here. I'd love to hear how much are you guys listen. All right, I'll start with a trivia question, then I'll get to my point. I want all of you to guess how many pitchers last season threw over 200 innings. 8. Mark says 8. Kevin?
Lower, like 5.
S'mores?
I'd say it's around 10.
5 on the dot. How many pitchers threw 180 innings? 20. 20. How much are you guys taking? Like Blake Snell is about to get reamed in free agency because he throws 150 innings each year. And sometimes his 150 innings are the best 150 you can find. That's only happened twice in his career, but he's not going to throw 180 innings. He's definitely not going to throw 200 innings. That's why Aaron Nola got the contract that he did. He's a workhorse. He's going to throw 180 to 200 innings. He's going to get you a 3.5, 4 dot ERA, and he's going to say, have a good night. That's what I give you every single year. Whereas Blake Snell, he better be throwing the best 150 innings in a season, right? We saw this with Colt, which we could talk about Colt in the next podcast because his whole strategy is confusing me. But how much do you guys weigh when picking up a pitching, when heading into free agency, which is going to head into our next conversation about total innings pitched? Because Kevin, you hit it on the head. You talked about innings pitched. That's what you want. And now we're talking about, does a pitcher go 4.5? Does he go 5 1/3? Or does a pitcher give you 6 or 7 good innings on a consistent basis like an Aaron Nola might?
Yeah, I really feel like you have to have outliers in Dynasty to win. Doesn't matter if it's basketball, football, baseball. You have to have outliers. So you got to take risks on the Snells. You can't just rely on, a guy getting you, 13 points per game on a really nice contract. You can fill up a roster really nicely and have structure for the long run. But I don't know if you want to churn out 3 seeds and 4 seeds and lose in the first round every year. But you got to have some outliers. Got to take risks.
Speaking from the man who did go to the World Series, I guess we should be taking some notes. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I think you have to have both. But I think it also comes into play, like, on the scouting part of this, to take the actual team that they're on. and how that manager manages. You know, when Snell was in Tampa, I mean, you knew he was getting pulled after the second round through, like no matter what. Whether showed in the play, like the real life playoffs, like what happened. But I think if you know what you're getting from a managerial standpoint, what this guy's done in the past, I think more of our gambles are on the younger guys, whether or not they've had TJ once or twice, or whether or not what their inning load looked like, how they've been managed in the minor leagues, which it kind of goes into that secondary part of our league in general. But I think that does fare into that. An old head like a Verlander or a Scherzer, like who they could be 100 years old, and that they're going to ride until the 7th or 8th or 9th, unless they're getting absolutely shelled.
Right.
So I think in those few points that you steal in there, 15 to 20 starts in a year, could win you some games, could win you the playoffs, could win you the league. Who knows? But you also you're silly to think that you're not going to take Blake Snell if you if he's going to give you 150 Cy Young innings, you're going to take it.
All right,
no matter what.
I want everybody to start with their hand up. I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to transition to our draft question. I want you to put your hand down when you're done paying for Blake Snell AAV. Okay. So when you get to a point where you're no longer paying for Blake Snell in the free agent draft, let's say today you have the choice to take him. You're going to pay $25 million a year for Blake Snell. Is everybody's hand staying up? I'm good with 25. You're paying 27. Okay, $30 million for Blake Snell a year. Would you go higher than 30 million, Kevin?
It depends on his landing spot, but I'd go low 30s. I'd be comfortable with that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think so I'm trying to I was as I'm have a lot of draft picks. I don't know if anybody knew that. I was trying to think where my landing spot was if he came to me, because I think Kevin and I are going to be making those decisions. I think Kevin's going to draft him based on the conversation that we just had. I'm not going to draft him at 3. And so Kevin will have the opportunity at 4 to draft Blake Snell. And if he doesn't draft him at 4, I'm going to take him. So I'm giving you a little bit of insider trading there. I'm not going to take him at 3. But when I forgot to have us rank front runners and contenders and outside looking in, maybe we'll do that next podcast. Which of the drafted free agents in this upcoming draft, I forgot to take Yamamoto out. So Ohtani does not count and Yamamoto does not count. Who will have the best rest of their career of all the free agent pitchers in this coming draft? Who do you believe that will be? Anybody can go first. It can't be Yamamoto. It can't be Shohei. And I'd love to hear if you have an argument that it would be someone over Yamamoto, because I've thought about it.
Hey, he just won the Cy Young. I think Snell is in the same tier as Yamamoto, and there's a lot of unknowns. I would have came on thinking, hey, you got to go the younger who's with the Dodgers, but here we are talking about innings pitched last year. This year, I think they're going 5-man rotation. Next year, they have to go 6-man rotation. You would think so that less outings, you never get 2-week pitching in the playoffs out of him. Snell landing spot here and there. I think they're same tiered.
Wow. Okay, so obviously you would take Snell if it was the rest of the class.
Yeah.
Over anybody else. Anybody
Yes.
else? Anybody else taking somebody other than Blake Snell?
I have a few hot takes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear them because I think I do too.
The only thing that tells me no with Blake Snell, because if you're talking the rest of his career, I think that he is on the second half of his career for sure. Even though he's only 31, I do think he is. So I mean, I look at a guy like Yariel Rodriguez, he's 27. Jack Flaherty's 28. I think Lucas Giolito's 29, and then Jordan Hicks is a relief pitcher, but he's 27 and he chucks the ball 105 miles an hour.
And they're going to be a converted starter.
Correct. I mean, and then he sits 95, 96, for 5, 6, 7 innings every 5th day. Like, I think that those guys have a little more upside. That could be just how I view things as well. But I wouldn't say I'm a Yamamoto hater, but Yamamoto's got a lot of he's got a lot of mileage that's going to come on that arm and come on how he's going to do things. So I think that that's going to change, even though he is kind of unconventional. I think I'm not sold 100% yet on Mr. Yamamoto myself.
Josh is saying Yama no. That's what word on
Hmm.
the street.
Yama maybe.
Listen, so now forget rest of career, or don't forget rest of career, add in rest of career and what you think their AAV might be landing at. I think we're going to see Jordan Montgomery. Montgomery, I think, is going to head back to the Rangers, is my suspicion. I think seeing him last this long in free agency means he's probably going to end up back with the Rangers. I don't know what that AAV looks like. I'm interested in a lefty soft tosser like Shota Imanaga, who's going to go play in Chicago. Hitting in Chicago the first half of the year is the worst. Nobody likes to hit the ball in Chicago when it's what, 45, 50 degrees outside and the wind is blowing in. And the only problem with Imanaga is I don't like that he's a fly ball pitcher. I think you're going to find him getting the ball out of the yard a couple more times than maybe other people in the class. But Blake Snell's walk rate was 14%, I believe, last year. We're talking about, and you said this, Mark, we're talking about a points league, right? What happens when you walk guys in this league is you lose a point every time you walk somebody. So Snell is going to put up some of your best games and some of your worst games, when you might find a guy like Imanaga. Yariel Rodriguez is a guy I think we should talk about, who is an absolute unknown. I reached out to Alec, as I constantly do. He's a guy that could be boom. He's a guy that could be absolute bust, and you never hear about him again in a year. So I think he falls to mid to late draft, second, third round, something like that, unless someone wants to take a flyer on him. All right, are you taking Jordan Montgomery, or are you taking Sonny Gray?
Gray.
Okay.
Sonny Gray.
I feel like Montgomery seems like he turned a corner and figured some stuff out at the end. That I don't know. Gray's just kind of older. You know what you're getting. Injuries could pop up.
I'm taking Montgomery. Okay. I'm fascinated by this. It's something maybe I've written about in the past. Is a guy? Is there a chance? Give me a percentage that you might think that a guy like Clark Schmidt, who's going to be on $1 million AAV, who's going to be in a Yankee rotation for sure. They don't have enough pitchers as it is. Is this guy is he a top 15 pick in the draft? He was rostered by who last year, I think? Kevin, maybe for a little bit.
I picked him up and dropped him 7 times last year. So I guess from experience, I don't trust him. I'm tired of thinking it's going to fire. So I'm saying a not top 15 pick.
Okay. So if I told, go ahead.
I think we're going to be surprised, and I think he's going to go just because he's $1 million. But if you just watch him and take the fantasy aspect out of it, he ain't worth it.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of $1 million guys that are like, whoa, why is he being taken at the 11th overall pick? All right, now I want to have a quick conversation. We're talking about AAV, and I told you guys before we got hopped on here that we would have this conversation. I want to have a quick conversation. It's 9:56. I don't remember when we started, but we got about 10 minutes left. Are we giving grace in 2024? I'm a pastor. This is kind of what I talk about it most often. Talk to me about, I think I wrote this. If you remember the article I wrote about the dinosaurs in our league, and we're starting to see a good amount of dinosaurs on our league that are sitting on the waiver wire. Justin Verlander is the next to join them. Colts, I think, is going to try to make a trade. I think we should have allowed to have some of that cap reimbursement, but Kevin got in the way of my opportunity there. I'm just kidding. Not really. No, just kidding. I want us to. Are we guys like Xander Bogaerts, who we made the claim he would have gone a top 5 pick last year if it was this time last year in the free agent pick? We saw Dansby Swanson, Trey Turner, We saw Xander Bogaerts, and who am I missing? The other shortstop. Dansby, Bogarts, Trey. There's 4 big name shortstops that went. Anyway, doesn't matter. We would have seen.
Lindor.
No, it was
Crawford,
he was a free agent.
Brandon Crawford.
No.
No.
Anyway, I can't remember. Somebody will remind me later on, I'm sure. But he would have been drafted top 5. There's no questions asked. What is he? $23 million a year, I believe he is. He was the same that was that Juan Soto was running at last year. Are we going to begin to see guys? If you go to the waiver wire right now, are we going to continue to see guys like Paul Goldschmidt at $26 million, Nick Castellanos at $20 million, Xander Bogaerts at $25 million? Are we going to continue to see these really, top 50 players in the league sit on the waiver wire? Is that going to be normative? I mean, we saw the cap scale. We're only going to be at 315 million that we can spend next year. So we're talking a mid-level player, probably a mid-plus player that can be added to your roster with that $15 million. So talk to me about the dinosaurs in our league. Are we going to continue to see these guys sit on the waiver wire? Or will we see them in the draft?
I think we see what we saw last year. There's going to be these dinosaurs that are just too heavy to carry on your roster. You can't put together a structured, balanced roster with them on it. And I like it. I think it brings this salary cap league into balance. You're going to have to find the sweet spot. You can't go top heavy because you've got 500 million to spend. It really forces you to do trades, do moves, really think about the long term. So I love it.
Mark, what do you say?
I'm with them. I think a couple of those guys you said, I think they get picked up. I think Goldschmidt's still too good that he's not going to be in the draft, but I think he's going to have a couple hot weeks, and then somebody's going to say, hey, I'm going to figure a way to get him on my roster. And so it just brings an element in our league that we want. It's more strategy. So that's the best thing.
Yeah. Josh?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I like looking at it from a baseball perspective too, like again, taking it out of fantasy, like you're crazy if you don't want Paul Goldschmidt or you don't want Nick Castellanos, but for the sake of what we're doing, I mean, they're going to both find themselves on a roster for the first time by the end of May, depending on who gets hurt or even before spring training ends, depends on what happens from that standpoint. But I mean, same thing could be said for pitchers too. Like you don't know what's going to happen. A big contract goes down, not named Yamamoto, Ohtani, Snell or whatever. You're going to cut those guys anyway, and then just figure it out down the road, I think. And that's where one of those guys could replace that. I don't think that they're going to go in the draft though.
On the next podcast of the A8 podcast, thank you guys for joining for the inaugural podcast. I have one more question for you, but I am going to bump 2 of our subjects, so I apologize. I think I talked too long. Shocker. Next podcast, we're going to talk about the new year, the new rules. We're going to just dissect the 6 to 7 new rules of the 5-team playoffs, our salary cap model that got voted in, spot track being the official standard for our league, a 2/3 vote for new rules that we want to implement, both in season and out of season. Roster spots will be voted on as a fluid change, which is one thing that I was interested in because I wanted to know as an owner, what do I expect moving forward? Could we add another utility spot in the future, or is this going to be it? And then opening day locked rookies is no more. That was, I think it was a good rule in a vacuum that made no sense in practicality. We'll talk about that next time. We're also going to rank pretender, contender, or what we think is a championship contender. We'll rank those 3 tiers next time that we jump on the podcast. But my last question for you, and it's a very selfish question because I believe in this and I drove it home. What do you think? I wrote about this a long time ago, and I'm just fielding your questions, so this is completely selfish. I dreamt up the idea of being able to utilize our cap tax reality to send, and I've been in trade talks with, I think, all three of you utilizing this strategy, and no one has said yes yet. I was in conversations with a person I will not talk about because I don't want to give his name out there, but who was considering an Oasis deal of receiving cap players, cutting your players up to $30 million as recent as last week.
Wow.
Do you think we will see? I mean, I was in conversation with Mark, trade talks. He wasn't even willing to go up to the $2-3 million conversation. Kevin, I had him on the hook. Oasis fell apart. The deal broke. Are we going to see Oasis deals become a thing, as we are not allowed to get any cap relief from a player that we own that we would like to incentivize to trade to another team? Will this happen? Will I say, Kevin, I will give you $4 million of cut tax Oasis if you take my $15 player? Do you guys think this is going to happen in our league?
Yes, it will happen. I hope it doesn't happen this year. I hope it doesn't happen next year, but eventually there's going to be some teams that have too much cap penalties because they've dropped players. They're in a tight spot, and this is a way out of it. It's a way to add another variable to a deal. But I hope that it takes a little bit of time to get there.
Why are you so worried about it happening now? Don't you think it's strategy and it's wise?
Well, we're all sitting here, 370 days ago, and this is still a brand new baby. You know, we haven't grown up yet, and we have a lot of decision makers that have put together decisions for the long term. So I don't want to, mess up this shaky ground for these long-term players that are in the league to have some short-term fixes.
Okay, but am I wrong in saying that an Oasis deal, if I receive $2 million in cap, you're more incentivized to make the trade that I want to send you a player that might be on a heftier contract?
Yeah.
Mark,
yeah.
What say you?
I mean, yeah, it makes it, being the first person to make that trade, it's going to be difficult because it more unknown, seeing how it works out, seeing when. I don't think it's going to be me involved in any of those trades.
Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I think that I think we'll take, some what's the word I'm looking for? I think we'll take I think we'll eventually adopt it, yes. Now the first person that's going to adopt it is going to be the hardest, just because nobody wants to be the first one that gets absolutely fleeced on something like that. Whether or not, the person doing the trading actually means to do that or not, I don't believe that we would have that unless it's Brent in our league. But I do think that the first person to do it, it's going to take some convincing. But as soon as it works out, I mean, just like every other thing, it's a copycat league. People start doing it, and it'll become the norm.
I will make this a normal thing in 2024. Just wait and see. It will become normative, and Kevin will be crawling in his skin at home. Why was the draft not farther away? Hey, any last thoughts before we sign off here? Guys, thank you so much for jumping on. It was awesome. We will continue to do this throughout the season. But any last thoughts before we get off here?
Yeah, looking forward to it, guys. This is awesome. Can't wait for the season to get started.
Yeah, same.
Hey, draft in person.
In-person draft.
I'll be in Indiana from February 12th to February 15th. That's all I got to say. If we can make it happen in between those days, I'm fine pushing the draft off. But I'm going to make my own video and write my own article about how it should have started 2 months ago. Appreciate you guys. Like I said, on the next episode, we'll jump into tiering some of our teams, which will be hard because we'll be discussing some of our actual teams in real time, and we'll probably be in more preparation for the coming of the draft. I've got a mock that I will come out with that I've already come out with episode 4. I'll drop another mock draft of the 5th edition, and I'd love to talk about it with you guys. Hey, thank you for watching and jumping on to the podcast. We will see you guys next time.